Hey Deja, hey Scarlett. How's it
Thank
going,
you.
guys?
Good.
Um,
Pretty
we're gonna be
good.
completely honest with you guys. Like, it's a Mercury retrograde. We just recorded about like 8 minutes before realizing our mics weren't like selected, and so we're starting over. But
Yeah.
yeah, so it is Saturday, February 13th. It's 12:31 p.m. Pacific time, but we're all over the world right now, and we'll get into that. I have Deja and Scarlett here to talk about the 5th and 11th houses. Super stoked about it. um, but to start, let's share some info about you guys. So we'd love to hear your SMR if you're comfortable with sharing, a little bit about your practice, and then we'll get into like how we know each other. Let's start with Deja. You're new to the show. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me. So I'm Deja. I'm a Sagittarius Sun, Leo Moon, Aries Rising. Um,
Super
I
fiery.
yep. It's all fire and air. I have been studying astrology for about 4 years and started practicing and like meeting with clients in 2020. Um, I studied philosophy in undergrad, and when I like came upon traditional astrology, and then when I like also got serious with philosophy as well, they all just kind of merged and just blew my mind, and I was like, wait a second, this is like so amazing. And so I really tried to incorporate a reasonable and very thoughtful and also philosophical concepts into how I um, speak about astrology. And I really like kind of getting into understanding the um, metaphysics, more or less, of what's going on with uh, us relative to the stars. But yeah, yes.
Awesome. And yeah, so Deja and I went to the same small all-girls school growing up. We didn't know each other because I'm a little older than you, which makes me feel so old. It's actually kind of cool because, yeah, so it's a very small all-girls school outside of Philly. And you were in middle school when I was in high school, so we didn't know each other. But I met your aunt at an alumni event in New York,
Mhm.
and we connected and like exchanged business cards, and she's like, I love astrology. Is she a Libra or something? I forget.
Yes, she's
Libra,
like,
yes,
oh
super
my God,
Libra.
so Libra. It's
So
crazy.
friendly, yeah. And yeah, and Libras are also so tall a lot of the times.
Hmm.
That's like a thing I noticed, just like the tall, lengthy, like, anyway. So so yeah, we connected, and then she told you about me, and
Mhm.
then we connected, had like a reading, and I was just like, yeah, you're really extremely smart. Like, you should be doing astrology. Why are you doing this? And so I'm so glad that you're doing it. It's
Me
really
too.
exciting to see.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, if you're listening and you really appreciate beautiful aesthetics, when it comes to the astro content that you're consuming, definitely check out Deja and Deja's social media and website, because it's all so gorgeous and so well done, and very aesthetically pleasing. So if you're like me, you will enjoy it. And yeah, Scar, how about you? Oh, and I will say, Scar, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
We had Scar on season 1, I believe it was episode 6, to talk about Mars with Drew Levanti. So welcome back, and yeah, please share your SMR and a little bit about your astrology practice.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. And there was the Mars episode, but also the BTS episode.
Oh my God,
So
thank you. I knew you were on again, but I couldn't remember. Yes, so thank you. BTS, I think that was episode like 16,
13.
13. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
I remember because it's like a special BTS number.
Yes, yes. Okay,
Anyway.
awesome.
Yeah, thank you for having me back. So my SMR, I'm Leo Sun, Aquarius Moon, Aries Rising. So also lots of air and fire. Um, I am really in my like astrology practice. I'm kind of really interested in the sort of innate and ongoing relationship that human beings have with the sky. Because I think, yeah, even though we're sort of disconnected from it in the past 100 or few hundred years or so, I think it is like something that's very fundamental, like cross-culturally across the world. Yeah, and I mean, astrology is basically just my primary way of engaging with the world. So I'm kind of always like thinking astrologically, contemplating astrologically. Yeah, and I am slowly like taking more clients. I really enjoy like doing client work, so I hope I can like kind of do more in 2021.
Yeah, you've been busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait till you have more time to do that, because I know you've been really busy. 2 new
Yeah.
kittens under your roof.
Oh yes, new kittens. Oh, the lights of my life.
They're so cute.
Yes, they are
Awesome.
adorable.
And yeah, we obviously met, and I say obviously because like 90% of the people on my show I met at NORWAC 2019, but we have been connected on Twitter prior to that, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, NORWAC 2019. I can't like fingers crossed NORWAC 2022. We can all gather again and reunite.
Yeah,
Hopefully
I
you'll be
really
back
want
in the
to.
States.
Yes, because I'm in Sydney
Yeah, we
actually,
didn't
and it
mention
is
that.
Valentine's Day here. So
Oh
Oh,
wow.
yeah,
fun.
happy
In
Valentine's
the
Day from
future.
Sydney. Yeah.
And Deja, are you in Philly right now?
Mhm. Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool. And yeah, Deja and Scarlett, this is your first time connecting, right?
Yeah,
Hopefully not the last. You guys have such similar charts, both
We
Aries
do.
I
risings,
know.
and
We were talking about this.
yeah, it's really exciting. I didn't even like connect that in my head when I asked you both to come on, but the reason I did ask both Deja and Scarlett on for this episode is because Deja has an 11th house stellium in Aquarius, and then a Leo moon in the 5th house, and then Scarlett has is it a stellium? You have a couple planets in the 5th, right?
I mean, I have my Sun and Venus, and then I
Okay.
have Vesta and Pallas
Okay.
Athene as
Okay, so
well.
you have a couple planets there in the 5th house, but
There's
especially
a
your
showing.
sun and Venus. Yeah, and then you're born in a full moon, so your moon's in Aquarius in the 11th. And yeah, I just thought you guys would be both great to talk about these houses, this axis with me. For me, I only have my nodal axis there, so my north node is conjunct Uranus and Neptune in Capricorn in the 11th, and then I have my south node in Cancer in the 5th, in my part of fortune there, but there's not a lot going on in my 5th house at least. But the ruler of my 5th is like very involved in a lot of things in my chart. So a really important axis for me. And I'm just excited to get talking about it because this is the axis of good fortune and good spirit. Like this is some good shit we're talking about. We're talking about the 5th and the 11th, and I'm stoked about it. So let's get started. I wanted to talk about the 5th and the 11th house axis in general, and like sort of the general themes that come up. Excuse me, with both of those. And I think to start, we can start to talk about succeedent houses. God, why is that so hard to say sometimes? Succeedent.
Yeah, I was thinking like Succeedent. I don't know.
Succeedent. That's a good way to pronounce it.
That is a good
Succeedent.
one.
Yeah.
Succeedent houses. Um, my way of sort of define, I don't know if this is like a definition, but sort of describing the succeedent houses, which are this the 2nd house, the 5th house, the 8th house, and the 11th house, as supportive houses. They come after the angular houses, and they sort of like help. It's almost like they're propping up the angular houses and supporting the events that go on in the angular houses. Do you guys have any like thoughts or other ways of describing or defining the succeedent houses?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with like supportive. And then to that, an extension of that is like Austin Coppock calls them like resource houses. So houses of resource, like the 5th house is like creative resource, and then 11th house being, I guess, like community resource, like social resource.
I love that.
Yeah.
Resource is a really good word for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree totally. And I also think alongside of like the supportive aspect that um comes with succeeded houses, there is this like energy of those planets in those places kind of rising to like importance or rising to prominence, especially, well, maybe this is just more specific to the 11th, but it's like an energy that kind of can then manifest as it getting stronger or kind of accumulating more of those resources over time, and then it kind of seeing that like upwards trajectory in a way, especially in the 5th and the 11th. I feel like the more like friends you have and the more fun you have, like it just, you enjoy that as you grow.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And just like the imagery of planets in succeedent houses, they are like rising, like as they move through the sky. Like if a planet is in the 2nd house, like in a couple hours, it will rise on the east. Same with a planet in 11th house, like a couple hours later, it's going to be culminating in the 10th. And so that I like that you brought that up, like the vision of like planets in succeedent houses, like they will rise a couple hours later into an angular house. So that's a cool way of thinking about it. Yeah, and when we're talking about the 5th and the 11th, traditionally they were referred to as the house of good fortune and the house of good spirit, and that's because we get our benefics rejoicing in these 2 houses. So Venus rejoicing in the 5th house and Jupiter rejoicing in the 11th house. And so these 2 houses are benefic in nature. And we'll get into that. And I'm like, oh, I'm so excited to dig into that. But
Yeah.
I don't want to get ahead of myself. So yeah, I mean, some very general things we find in the 5th and the 11th. The 5th being like I like to say it's what we give birth to. It's like what we're, I guess I'll just say it has lots to do with like pleasure, enjoyment, creativity, like these sorts of pleasurable things in life. Whereas the 11th is a little bit more about, your community, your network, your friends, the people that are supporting you. Yeah, do you guys have any, I'm like trying to think of good words to like tie both of them, because with certain houses like the 3rd and the 9th, it's like you find travel in both of those houses, you find learning in both of those houses, and I'm like, what is something that you can tie the 5th and the 11th together in that way, besides it just being like good and fortunate?
Yeah, I mean, good and fortunate, a big one, because like you said, like the benefics have their joy there. And I was thinking about this as well. And actually, like in preparation for coming on here today, I was sort of looking at what some of the ancient authors had to say about these 2 houses, and what seemed to connect them was like a lot of authors actually put friends in the 5th house as well. But then in general, sort of like this connecting, like they're both sort of like about goodwill and good things, like very positive houses in, I
Yeah,
guess, like their core significations.
that makes
And
a
they
lot of
both are
sense.
kind of like in supportive aspects to the 1st house as well. Like the
Yeah.
5th house is configured by trine, the 11th house is configured by like sextile. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Let's get into it. Let's get into the 5th. You both have planets there in Leo. That's really fun and exciting. So yeah, the traditional, let's talk about some traditional significations of the fifth house. And I always like to start with the fact that it is the joy of Venus. It's where Venus rejoices. And you know, Venus, it's a benefic planet. It's referred to as the lesser benefic. And I think I'm like, do I want to get, yeah, maybe we should get into greater versus lesser. Because it's not that like Venus is like, you know, lesser in terms of not as good. It's just that the way I think of it, at least, is that Jupiter beneficence is just very grand, and it's the biggest planet, you know. So when we're talking about Jupiter and the ways that it like bestows blessings, it tends to be things like um, opportunities and you know, wealth or abundance in some way, shape, or form. It makes things bigger, um, and yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Whereas as Venus, it's more about the pleasures, like the things that we need in our everyday life to like not get depressed, right? We
Yeah.
need to be able to experience joy. We need some love. We need some connections with people. So it's not that it's like those things matter less. It's just that it's on a lesser scale, I think, in terms of I'll put it this way, and I think I'm pretty sure this came out of a conversation with you, Scar, and some other folks, um, early pandemic times, 2020.
What a time.
But where all we did was talk. All I did was talk to astrologers all day long, and I still do. Honestly, that was just the beginning of it. Never stopped. But we talked. I'm pretty sure we had a conversation about this where we talked about the difference between the greater and the lesser benefic. And the way I would describe it is like a Jupiter blessing would be you get the job offer of your dreams that you've been like wanting for so long, and it takes you to another country, and you know, you get a raise and you get to like experience like this whole brand new place and this great job. Like that's sort of a Jupiter blessing. Whereas like a really good Venus blessing would be like a really good first date that's like on a Friday night, and you eat like amazing food, and you go back and you have like bomb sex all night, and like you're listening to
Oh yeah.
bomb music, and you like it carries over into the next day. You wake up, you have like great morning sex, and you're just like chilling out in the garden. Like that is Venus type of blessings, you know, where it's like it might not be this like grand thing that changes your life. It could change your life, but you know, it's not like shifting, it's not like moving you across the world. You know what I mean? It's like
Mhm.
these lesser scale things, but it's about
More
pleasure.
intimate.
Yeah, it's more
Yeah.
intimate. It's
Yeah.
and we're talking
And
about
embodied.
Venus.
Mhm.
It's Venus is a nocturnal planet, right? So we're talking about things that are happening. Um I like to say that's on the terrestrial level. It's like, you know,
Mm.
things of the body. Um yeah, things
Yeah,
that
a
are
bit more
more
like
like,
instinctual.
yeah,
Yeah.
Um,
pleasures.
yeah, and I think like, yeah, I'm definitely a night chart, aka my benefic of sect is Venus, because when you were talking about like the Jupiter blessings, I was like, oh yeah, like that sounds great. Like, but then when you were talking about the Venus beneficence, I don't know, I had like a bodily like reaction. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like so amazing. Like I want that. Like
Yeah.
so, and I think
Yeah,
that's very like
exactly.
Venusian as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like being connected to like that feeling, like that sensual, like sensing part
Mhm.
of yourself, where it's
Yeah.
just like this reaction that comes from within, even though it's kind of like sparked from something internal, but it's sort
Mm-hmm.
of like drawing you out in this really intimate way.
Mhm.
Whereas I feel like Jupiter stuff kind of like almost like expands your world in a way. Whereas like I feel like Venus stuff, I don't know, expands your heart, or like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
That's
more
so
like
cute.
I love
internal.
that.
Yeah.
That was adorable.
This is our fifth house
Thank you.
night chart Venus. So yeah, that's I thank you for that. Yeah, I think that's probably a good way of illustrating the difference between like greater and lesser. It's not that, yeah, just don't get caught up in those words as in like, you know, better or worse. It's just grander. Jupiter's blessings
Mm.
can really be like very grand. Um in Venus's blessings. Yeah, more like of the heart, of the body, and the soul. So do you guys want to like kind of list off some general significations around the fifth house that come to mind?
Sure. And just really quick to the Jupiter aspect, I feel I
Yeah.
definitely, Scarlett, when you said intimacy, that was like, I was like, that's the word. That's it.
Yeah.
Because Venus is very much about like, it's like connecting with humans on that personal level, whereas Jupiter is like,
Mm.
I have this really great news that I need to tell like Twitter, or I need to
Yeah.
like I need to get on a pulpit and be like,
Soapbox.
everyone.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Spreading the word. Spreading. Yeah. More worldly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Ooh, that's a good
Almost.
one. Definitely,
Yeah.
for sure. But the fifth house, I like children in the literal sense and in like the metaphorical sense, and all of your creations then being your children,
Mhm.
all of the things that you create, all of the things that you enjoy doing, hobbies. Um, uh, wait, this is me. Truthfully, this is like, fun and pleasure. I also put sex in the fifth. That's
Oh,
one
hell
thing for
yeah.
sure. I
Yeah.
think that's
Me
like,
too.
yeah, pretty firm on
Sex
that.
is the fifth. It's not the eighth.
No,
It's not the eighth.
it's not. Um,
Hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, for
yeah,
me, I have my Venus there, so like it can be. I don't like it. That's why I'm like, you don't want it to be in the eighth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
children, I like that you said that. So children is one of the main like traditional significations of the fifth. Um, as it's like, well, okay, let's talk about the aspects too, right? Because the fifth makes a trine to the ascendant. It's what's the word when there's like overcoming, and then what's the opposite of overcoming?
Is it superior? Is that it?
No, superior would
Or like
still be
no?
overcoming. So inferior? That doesn't
Oh
sound
yeah.
right.
I
Yeah.
think it is
Is it
inferior.
inferior?
Yeah.
Okay. See, these words, these traditional words is exactly why people
They're
it's
We
just
got to
so
remix the
intense.
words. Remix
they're
the vocab.
serious. They are
But
serious.
yeah, so inferior trine to the ascendant, which only means that it's coming from below, like below the horizon instead of above the horizon. So the trine, it's like the ascendant is sort of like, how do I even say this? Like it comes before the fifth house. And so they're making a trine, but yeah, it's inferior instead of superior, as and like we'll talk about the 11th house is a superior sextile to the ascendant because it's above the horizon. But anyway, so yeah, we have that fifth house trine from the ascendant, and if the ascendant or the first house is the life of the native, the fifth house is like what directly like the what like comes straight out of the native in terms of like yeah, I don't know. It's a good way of putting that. Like it's almost
It's
like the
quite a
blessings from the
mm,
native almost.
yeah. It's very generative.
Yeah,
Um, and I think the trine is of the nature of Jupiter.
exactly.
So we have all these overlapping like benefic, I guess, significations. Like fifth house
Yeah.
is the joy of Venus, and it's connected by a trine, which is like the aspect of Jupiter. Um, yeah.
Yeah. So with children, it's like children, and again, fifth house is not only children, but we're just starting here. It's like I like to say it's what you give birth to, the fifth house. So that can be literal human beings, that can be a whole other things. It can be ideas, it can be art. But anyway, yeah, it's like that which like is it's almost like the abundance produced by the native with that
Mm.
trine, and shows up in the fifth house as children. So yes, it can be children. If we're talking about like someone's chart in regards to their fertility, we're talking about like when they might get pregnant, we're definitely going to take a peek at that fifth house, see what's going on there. And then like Deja said, like art, creativity, what you're yeah, again, what you're giving birth to, right? Which can be art project. I was just on the phone with my friend who is a fifth house Libra sun, and I think he has some other planets there too. But we went to art school together, and he's an artist like full time. And he was just saying, he was just talking like very passionately about, he also has a Leo moon too, but he was talking about like a book that he produced. He's a Gemini rising and wrote a book. He didn't write it, but he did an art book called Twin Flames, and he photographed like
Oh wow.
100 different sets of twins.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Which is really,
That's
really
That's so
cool.
cool.
But he was
That's
talking
some
about like giving birth to it, and how he just like has these ideas, and he was really like speaking about it like, you know, like a proud mom almost. And
Aw.
it just made me like, I was just like, I wish he knew astrology, because I'm like, this is so your fifth house sun. Like you're
Yeah.
so
Oh
excited
my
about like
gosh.
these babies that you're giving birth to. So
Yeah,
yeah, the
sometimes I
fifth
have to hold
house.
myself back from like yelling at people like, oh my
Oh
gosh, that's
yeah.
so like fifth house son of you.
Yeah.
Like
And they're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. What the
they're
fuck are
like,
you
okay,
talking about?
Scarlett.
Yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, so we have that, and then we have sex too, which is what produces babies, but
Yeah.
also it produces pleasure. And you know, it can be something that that creates joy, and again,
Mm,
intimacy in our lives. It's like, you know, it feels good. Hopefully it feels good. You know, that's the goal, at least at the fifth house, is to do things that feel good.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you have thoughts about sex in the fifth house, Scar?
Yeah, sex and some other things. Like I was kind of when I was sort of thinking about the fifth house, I was reminded of Audre Lorde's essay, The Uses of the Erotic as Power. And so I reread that, and I was like, found so much in there that I feel like fits into the fifth house. So I'm about to do like quite a bit of quoting, just because I feel like Audre
Go
Lorde's
for
just
it.
like, and then sort of reflect on that. So um, Lord describes the erotic as a resource within each of us, rooted in the power of our unexpressed or unrecognized feeling. So we have that sort of resource aspect of it, which I was like talking about before as the fifth house being a house of resource. She says it's a measure between the beginnings of our sense of self. So we have that like first house connection and the chaos of our strongest feelings, an internal sense of satisfaction to which once we have experienced it, we know we can aspire. The erotic is not a question only of what we do, it is a question of how acutely and fully we can feel in the doing. Once we know the extent to which we are capable of feeling that sense of satisfaction and completion, we can then observe which of our various life endeavors bring us closer to that fullness. And she speaks to the erotic as this nurturer of all our deepest knowledge, and as something that empowers us. So with Lord's like idea of the erotic, it's like deeply rooted in feeling. It's deeply sensual and spiritual and political because, as she says, in order to perpetuate itself, every oppression must corrupt or distort those various sources of power that can provide energy for change. Yeah, and I just like really, I'm sure I'm not the first astrologer to sort of like make this connection with Lord's erotic and the fifth house. I just like, I don't know, when I was reading that, it just like sort of spoke to these experiences of joy and pleasure in the fifth house as being very like embodied, because the fifth house is like below the horizon, and very close to like the fourth house. So it is this very like earthy embodied place, and it's a joy of Venus, which is like the embodied benefic, and that's what those sort of intimate pleasures, that sort of, yeah, like this feeling when we're experiencing the fifth house, we're sort of interfacing with the rest of the world, but having this like very internal experience of it, and very like whole body, like joyful, pleasurable experience. And I love how it kind of also connects to the 11th house as well, because she's speaking about how like once you have this experience of the erotic, and you sort of recognize that and value that as something important, it's sort of else in your life sort of has to meet that satisfaction. And and we'll talk a bit more about this later, but the 11th house is a lot about like aspiration.
Mhm.
So I think, I don't know, with those experiences of like joy and pleasure can really drive a lot of like hope and inspiration for us in other parts of our lives. And so I think a lot of what she's saying as experience of the erotic are very Venusian things. So definitely sex, but also like could be like when you're dancing, or like even when, I don't know, you're sort of like encasing this tomato seedling in this nurturing soil, and the sun's like on your back, and you're feeling this like whole body sensuality of the experience of like bringing this thing into life. I don't know, I just feel like it generates this intention to live fully, and that's what the 5th house is all about, like things that you do simply because you love doing them so much.
I love that. I love that picture you painted. I'm just like imagining the sun on my back right now. I'm sitting on a heating pad, and so it's like almost, I almost have it.
Yeah, the sun just rose here. Well, like not just, but like in the last hour. And so I don't know, I just kind of want to go out there like after this and just be in the sun.
Yeah, Leo style.
Yeah, Leo style, exactly.
Yeah, when I have thank you for sharing all that, by the way. And yeah, when I have clients who are 28 or about to be 28, I just turned 29. 28 is a 5th house year, also 40 too. So clients who are either 28 or 40. I usually don't get clients who are 16. I haven't yet. But yeah, 5th house perfection years, like I said, 16 is one. I guess 4 would be one too. 4, 16, 28, 40, 52, all 5th house perfection years. And excuse me, most of the time it's 28-year-olds or 40-year-olds, but regardless, I always tell folks that it's a year where you're meant to figure out what feels good, like what turns you on, what is pleasurable for you. And it is just so fucking important to figure that out for yourself. Like it is so important. I would say just as important as like, making sure you have your finances in check, and making sure that you have your health in check. Like knowing what feels good for you, what turns you on, what I like to say, what sparks joy, Marie Kondo style.
Such a good phrase.
Yeah, sparks joy is like my favorite 5th house phrase.
That was good.
But yeah, it's so important because like you can't rely on other people to do that, to bring that for you. Like you cannot rely on other people to spark joy for you and create, figure out what turns you on, what makes you pleasurable. Like you need to know that for yourself. And it's such an important, especially when I'm talking to clients about like, wanting to be in a relationship, which like, hey, me too. All this work comes from like doing this myself as well. But realizing that like, you need to do that work first. Because again, it's like, you can't project that. You can't like rely on someone else to come into your life and just like figure it out for you.
Totally.
So really digging into your 5th house is like super important. And my 5th house year was spent primarily in quarantine. So figuring that out was like, it was a whole fucking journey for me, at least, because it's not like I could, go out and do all these activities to like figure out what feels good for me. It was like really living in my childhood bedroom, like, and figuring like in quarantine, like not seeing anyone for months and months, and trying to figure out what those things were for me. And it's important. It's super important.
I feel like the 5th, go on.
Oh, okay. I also feel like it kind of speaks to our like self-expression in a way, or like your creative expression, then also helping you and with that trine as well. And I feel like with the inferior implications that it has, I feel like, and it being below the horizon, I feel like that speaks to it just kind of being invisible. And it's like not your creative passions aren't necessarily like on the out, like very like obvious to people
Mm-hmm.
unless you are like an artist. But I feel like there's a very a personal and intimate relationship that manifests when you are kind of in your doing fifth house things, because it allows you to tap into um, a side of yourself that is coming from within. It's coming from the invisible, and it's making you feel really good. And I've especially, I feel like with my moon being in my fifth house, you were talking about how like really checking in on like what actually is enjoyable for you. I feel like that has always been something that I've really kind of haven't really been able to have words for it until I found astrology. And I was like, oh, wait, no, that's why. Like, I need to make sure I'm having fun. Because if I don't,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like very sad and I will not be passionate about what I'm doing. Um, yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot
Mm.
of sense. Yeah, I feel the self-expression part for sure. And the creative expression, especially. Um, yeah, I'm thinking I have a friend, Ryan, who has a Libra fifth house. I have a lot of Gemini rising friends, like too many, not too many. I'm joking. I love Gemini risings. But yeah, I have one. He has a fifth house Venus and Libra conjunct Spica and like in a night chart. And it's
Wow.
just, he's so expressive and so creative and just like loves to perform. What he does is you guys remember Omegle?
Oh my
Yes.
gosh, yes.
So it's still a thing. And what he does is he goes on Omegle and he like finds people and he'll just ask them like he'll be like, I'm gonna rap for you, like give me a topic, give me a word, and he'll just like freestyle rap for people at Omegle and like brighten their days. And
That's
he films them
amazing.
and they're hilarious, like they're so much fun to watch because people get so like one, they don't expect him to be a good rapper because he's like this skinny white dude with like really long blonde hair. Um, so there's that. There's like the surprise. But then too, he's like really good at it. And so yeah, I'm not gonna get into his chart, but it makes sense that he's like really good at coming up with, freestyling on the spot.
Mm.
But yeah, it's just like so cool to watch him like he gets really excited and the people that he's rapping to get so excited and joyful, and I'm like, that's that Venus just like spreading love, really spreading good vibes all over the
Yeah.
internet.
Definitely.
Yeah, there's definitely that excitement with the fifth house. And I feel like when you're doing the fifth house, you're doing things that kind of like are very like make you feel alive and like in
Mm,
touch
yeah.
with yourself, and also like, so there's sparks joy as like a good fifth house phrase. Another one that I like, that I feel like I'm not going to pronounce it properly. It's one of those like borrowed French phrases. It's like joie de vivre or something. But
That sounded good enough
basically,
to me.
okay.
I don't know French.
But yeah, it translates to like the joy of living. So I feel like the fifth house is like, I guess, yeah, basically what brings you pleasure and enjoyment and aliveness, which isn't necessarily easy to access because I feel like we're very much sort of often like shamed for like the things we enjoy. Like there's this term called like guilty pleasures, and it's like,
Mm,
why should we feel guilty for like having pleasure about
yeah.
something? Or like, why should I be embarrassed? Like, why should I be embarrassed because I'm a BTS stan? Which I'm not anymore. But I was just like, just because,
I mean, you're
like,
not
and it wasn't
embarrassed, you
because of
still are a
like,
stan.
yeah, I'm still a stan. But it's not because I was embarrassed because like what I was doing was embarrassing. It was because I was like, oh, like, what will other people think? Like they'll judge me or they'll think I'm just like being silly. And it's like, but part of the enjoyment of it is like the silliness and the lightness of it. There's also like seriousness to it as well. But yeah, joy and pleasure isn't always easy, and doesn't always feel like acceptable to access.
So true.
And I think, yeah, breaking through that is very like liberatory in a way. Like going back to Audre Lorde, like she says how like the oppressive powers like kind of want to, you know, suppress whatever gives the oppressed energy, and joy and pleasure is something that gives people energy. So yeah, I think, you know, leaning into joy and fully like embracing that is very like liberatory. Like not
Reminds me of
because it
like
gives you
Black
energy,
Joy.
like it has that trine to the first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, yeah, just like how when fuck shit is happening, like fuck shit's always happening, but especially like, you know, when it's like really loud in the news. And oftentimes you'll see like Black people, especially on Twitter and social media, like kind of countering a lot of that with just like celebrate like Black joy and just showing like, you know, videos and pictures of Black people just like having fun, enjoying life, like just leaning into pleasure. And you know, check out hashtag Black Joy on like Twitter or any social media. You'll be smiling for like hours because yeah, I love that you brought that up because yeah, the 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 suppression and stifling of like joy and pleasure in marginalized and oppressed communities is like very, very real. And we're always pushing back against that though, you know, because it's like joy and pleasure is our birthright, and it's impossible to take it away, really, because it's who we are.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
And yeah, bringing it back to like the joy of Venus, I just feel like, you know, like a lot of the significations of the fifth house are related to it being like the place that Venus rejoices. And when thinking about Venus, it is like Venus wants us to experience things which will sort of like draw us out of ourselves into relationship with other people or other, like the natural world or something. And so, yeah, like these experiences like of joy and beauty and truth and the erotic, those are all capitalized, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of bring us into relationship with each other as well, which kind of speaks to what we were talking about before with like the intimacy of the Venusian blessings as well.
Yeah, it's because like
So
Venus really
Venus
like
keeps us together.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's like the glue. It like softens and moistens enough so that like adherence can happen, you know. I always think of Venus as like a soothing balm, especially like when we're looking at it, if the malefics have like gotten too much, you know, if you're a little too dry, a little too cold, a little too extra hot, like Venus will be that soothing balm so that you can kind of like come back to yourself, recenter yourself.
Ameliorating.
Yeah. So fifth house joys and pleasures, like that's what they do for you too. And I'm glad that you brought up that, like, you know, fifth house joys and pleasures can be really difficult to access. Just for one, our culture, like especially Western culture, doesn't really emphasize it as you know, a necessity to experience joy and pleasure. We do it, but again, like Scarlett said, it's like these guilty pleasures, or you know, you can only experience joy and pleasure if you've like done all your work. You know, it's like work hard, play hard. You can only play hard if you work really hard, right? And I think just for people listening, like, you know, you might find that it's harder for you to access those things. And I think that looking at the ruler of the fifth house will kind of give you more information around that, like where you find joy and pleasure, what by where I mean where the ruler is, what house it's in, what sign it's in, what aspects it's making can really speak to you know, the ease or difficulties around finding joy and pleasure. So, you know, some folks might have Saturn in the fifth in a night chart, and you weren't allowed to play as a kid unless you like did X, Y, and Z, did all your, or maybe you weren't allowed to play at all. Or, you know, you just had so much responsibility that wasn't available to you. Or maybe the ruler of your fifth is in an exact opposition to Mars, you know, and it's like, there's some fear that might come along with that. So just to say that, it, you know, acknowledging that it can be really difficult for folks, and kind of like tapping into your fifth house, what's in there, the ruler, what it's doing, might help you unpack some of that and figure out like ways to go about, you know, figuring out what sparks joy. Because it's possible, even Saturnian fifth house folks, like, you know, it's possible, it's there for you. Any other thoughts about fifth house stuff? Like, I mean, Scar, you have a bunch of planets there. Deja, you have your moon. For me, it's like South Node. I have my own thoughts around that, but yeah. Any other fifth house thoughts?
Yeah, something else that just came to me when thinking about the fifth and relative to aspects it's making to other houses. And this is, I also think, particularly true for me as well, because the ruler of my fifth is in my ninth, but there is a trine between the fifth and the ninth. And I feel like, and I don't really, honestly, just came to me and I was like, oh, wait, that's true. So I haven't really thought about it that much, but I feel like there's still like, with like your creativity and like with all the things that you're able to make and all of your fun, it kind of can then also support your meaning of life and support like what your philosophy is. And I because I feel like when you're able to really be true to what does bring you joy, it allows you to like hone in on what your meaning of life is, like what is required to kind of support the really cool knowledge that you're kind of continuing to gain from the ninth. But yeah, and it's also getting blessings from God from the ninth. So I feel like, yeah, I love the fifth a lot. And it brings a lot of joy. And I think back, I was honestly just thinking about my fifth house perfection year when I was 16. And it's really crazy because I had Jupiter going through the fifth house. I like traveled to multiple times in one year. I had sex for the first time. It was like it was crazy. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe. And I just remember 16 being so fun for me, and I was just like, yes, like this is it.
Fire
Too
trine
much
activated.
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah.
I love that you brought that up. Like just thinking about having sex for the first time at 16, which I'm sure a lot of people do, but hey, there was a whole TV series around 16 and pregnant, which,
Yeah.
you know, when you're 16, you're in a fifth house year. And fifth house has to do with pregnancy. So yeah, that's, I'm glad you brought that up. Not to say that you were pregnant at 16 or anything, just
Yeah, no.
it
That's
reminded
wild.
me of that.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, and just like I find the fifth house people, whether that be your chart rulers in the fifth, or you have your sect light, your sun or your moon, or even a stellium in the fifth house, like I find the fifth house people just like no matter what they're doing, they're just like, is this going to be fun, or is this going to like support me feeling like I'm like actually living life? Like
Yep.
if it's boring in the slightest, it's like, count me out. I just don't want to be involved in it. Like that's very fifth house to me.
Can't agree.
Yeah,
Can't agree.
just like if it's gonna be fun, cool, I'm down.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, definitely. And I just feel like one thing I think about with the fifth house, I feel like it's very playful. And I think it's also such like a magic making house because it's so creative. It's like what you're making. So I feel like when you're connecting with the fifth house, it can be really like, I don't know, yeah, bringing like your like thoughts and ideas like into fruition. So like what you said before, Kirah, like what you give birth to. I think there's just something very like magical about that. Yeah, and very like, I love like the connections with the trines, like with the first, fifth, and ninth. I don't know. I think they're all sort of like, I mean, with trines, it's like they're all working together. They're all sort of like picking up on one another, and maybe, you know, like for myself, because I have Aries rising, that's like the cardinal in the first house. So maybe whichever, like, for in the fifth, ninth, or first, wherever you have that cardinal sign. So if you have the cardinal in the first, maybe like that's kind of like where this process of understanding like the self and your place in the world can start. Maybe if the cardinal is in the fifth, that's like kind of like the initiating spot to get you going. Like maybe to come back to yourself, you just need to like, I don't know, just make something, like make anything. And then if it's in the ninth, maybe it starts with like getting like another perspective from somewhere else, like sort of philosophizing and contemplating and having that spiritual experience. And then I feel like, yeah, it just kind of like creates this flow, which, yeah, you spoke a bit about, Deja.
I love that.
I love that. That was great.
The only other thing I want to mention is, and we kind of mentioned it, but just like artists, like fifth house people tend to be artists in some way, shape, or form, whether it be, you know, performance or, you know, what is it called? Like fine art, like that's not, I don't like, what am I blanking on what
I know
that
what you
would be.
mean.
I like
like
went to art
people
school.
who do painting and
Yeah.
like drawing.
Visual arts.
Visual
Yeah.
arts. Thank you. I literally went to the School of Visual Arts.
Oh,
And it just totally totally had a mind, like totally had a mind, whatever those things are called. See, I'm losing my words. Thanks, Mercury.
Mind blank.
Thank you. But but yeah, artists and the musicians, like I know Scar, like we'd just be like hanging out on FaceTime or house party, whatever, and you just like grab a guitar sometimes and like start playing.
I'm such a stereotypical Leo, but
yeah, I mean that's very true for like fifth house type people. They just, you know, oh yeah, I know how to play a couple instruments, or like, yeah, I can draw. And it's like they're like an amazing illustrator. It's just like natural talents and gifts. It's like what you're naturally sort of just like
natural creators,
pretty good at. Yeah, creatively.
That's true, because yeah, I am like, I love like playing music, and even though I'm like, you know, not technically like virtuosic, I just like do it because I really enjoy it.
Just feels good.
And I really like enjoy performing as well. And then I have a twin, so she has like the same placement in the fifth, and she's like this naturally like incredible like drawer.
That's amazing.
So yeah, I think like that creative aspect of like you're making something that sort of like it's coming from within almost, and then you're like making it sort of like embodied, like
and it
the
feels
fifth, because
good.
it's below the horizon, is very embodied.
Yeah.
My boyfriend actually has he's also Leo, right? I mean, not Leo rising, Aries rising, and has a Leo stellium in his fifth, and he has such an amazing ear for music. It blows my mind. Like he'll find tunes from like all these crazy spaces, and I'm like, what the heck? And makes these really like thorough and cohesive playlists that are just like amazing. And it's really interesting to like watch him curate music. Is just so it's really
hot.
Cool. Yeah.
Like that sounds hot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have my ruler of the seventh and the fifth, and I just like, no matter what, I just always seem to have crushes on musicians.
Yeah.
And also I think fifth house is like the crush house. It's infatuation. And I have a lot of crushes.
Romance. Yeah.
So many.
So
And I
many.
just made this connection that like the first time I had sex was after a concert, and I have
Oh, wow.
Venus in the fifth. So just made that
Wow.
connection.
Love that for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I didn't have sex when I was 16, but I was making out a lot. Probably more too. I just remember
Making out.
I just remember really, I don't know, like just being like such a makeout queen.
Hilarious.
Make out queen. Oh my gosh.
Back
I love
then.
that.
Yeah. Oh, the fifth
Yeah.
house. We're all just like, oh, love,
Yeah.
sex, romance,
Ah,
pleasure, chocolate.
yeah. When I was 16, I was just like, yeah, having fun with like my three best friends. We did go to like a lot of concerts actually, and we just like loved music and would bond over
Mhm.
music. Like that's actually how like we met,
Music.
was like
Yeah.
through going to an MGMT concert
Oh
together.
my
Like
God.
we were in the same math class, and then like I was friends with one of them, and then she was like friends with this other girl, and then we all went to an MGMT concert together, and then yeah, we just became best friends from there.
Concerts. I miss
So
it.
I miss
I know. I
oh, me
remember I
concerts
saw
so
too.
MIA.
much.
I saw a lot of concerts in my fifth house year too. Now I'm thinking about it. MIA, NERD, like
Oh my
some really
gosh.
fun ones. And yeah, the music part is just huge. The ruler of my fifth is opposite Venus. And I just like music is life. Like I like definitely
Yeah.
wrote that on my wall when I was 16. Like music is everything to me. And like I don't like being in silent spaces because I just like want to fill it with music all the time and singing. Like I don't sing. Yes, my name is Shakira. My middle name is Aaliyah. I cannot sing. Um
Wow.
two singer names, can't sing. But like I love singing, and it's just something that makes me feel really, really good. I make up songs all the time, constantly. Like there's a dog around, I'm singing to the dog. So yeah, I love that. Yeah, I'm glad that we talked a little bit about like the fifth house and just like music and art and like just making things for the hell
Yeah,
of it. Um
and having crushes.
and having
Yeah.
crushes.
Ah, having
Yeah,
crushes brings me joy. Um,
honestly.
so
How can you live without crushing? That's my thing. Um all right.
there's just
I
so
think
many
it's
amazing people out there to crush on. So
exactly. There's so many hotties. How can you not?
and maybe we can find them in the 11th house.
Hey, that's a really good segue.
That was great. That was perfect.
Thank you.
So yeah, let's get into the 11th house. Traditional significations. So the 11th house is the what's referred to as the good house of the good spirit or good diamond. Is it diamond? Daemon?
Daimon.
Daimon. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I always pronounce that wrong. I can spell it, but pronouncing it is hard. So yeah, the House of the Good Daimon, and I think you can talk a little bit about that, Scar, because I know that
Yeah.
you get into that.
Yeah. I went to this great lecture from Dorian Greenbaum at a conference in January last year, back when we could, meet in person. And yeah, it was a lot about the daimon, and basically, the daimon is like this sort of personal guiding companion spirit who sort of like, sort of, like whispering in your ear, like the good angel, like
Yeah,
on your shoulder, whispering in your ear, like guiding you towards like your fate, or like guiding you towards like certain choices. Um, so, and it's very like supportive, which I think connects to a lot about what the 11th house is about. It's a very supportive house. Like, it's the house of like fellowship and like goodwill. Yeah, and yeah, the daimon is kind of, I guess, like a guardian angel sort of like concept.
yeah.
If we,
Wasn't
yeah,
it sort of like everyone when you're born, like you're sort of assigned a daimon?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it's like that little good angel on your shoulder. But it kind of through time got kind of translated into like the good
Demon.
angel and a bad angel, which like the
Yeah.
11th house, sorry, the 12th house is referred to as the house of bad spirit, which would be like the bad or the evil daimon,
Yeah.
which we'll get into in the next
It's like fucking
episode.
with your fate.
Yeah, exactly. But the good one is like, I immediately always think of The Emperor's New Groove. Like, I can't not think of that movie when I
Oh my
think of
gosh.
the good and bad angel. Cause like, what was the guy's name? Like Honk or something, or like Kronk,
Kronk.
Kronk,
Kronk. Because pull the
Honk.
lever, Kronk.
Yeah, exactly. Kronk, like he had the good angel and the bad angel that were so funny. That's immediately what comes to mind for some reason. But maybe some other millennials might
I'm
remember
crying.
that too. Um but yeah, so basically that concept sort of like got morphed over time into being like, you know, the good angel, bad angel, sort of thing. And basically it's just like we have this spirit, this guardian spirit that kind of like guides us in the right
Yeah. It's like our
direction.
guides. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's another way we talk about that sort of concept is like our guides.
Our spirit guides. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Socrates. This is actually like a thing in philosophy that, and I was so crazy. I was like, when you in the outline you had that word, and I was like, oh, I know what that is.
Tell us more. Philosophy.
Yeah, it's essentially it's the same exact thing. Where Socrates, but he doesn't use the exact term like daimon, but because it the word itself comes from Greek and then I think in Latin it's like daimonion or something, like it's a little bit longer, or has a like a different spelling. But essentially when he is put on trial for like telling the youth about like encouraging them to use like their reason and not to just like fall back on God as like the source of all knowledge. He's just like, I wouldn't tell people to do the wrong thing, or like I wouldn't like advise them to do the wrong thing because I've had this voice that like speaks to me. It's that's like kind of giving him this wisdom. I forget the exact word that he considered that he calls it, but it's like he's like this. It's a divine wisdom, a divine voice that's not necessarily, it's not God, and it's not like any of the gods, but as Scarlett said, it's like this nice source of guidance. And even Demetra George spoke about the daimon relative to the asteroids, and how they are kind of like planetary keepers and like keeping up with things and like making sure that like there is a resourceful guide essentially, and them kind of representing that as well. In his conscience, that's what he says. There's like this whole debate within like the philosophical community that's like, is he talking about like spirits or is he just talking about his conscience? And but there is that like getting knowledge from a higher source, or
Yeah.
another source that doesn't really come from you. Well, in a way it does, but you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Demetra George, because she has a great lecture about the 11th and 12th houses. You can find it through her website or through Astrology University, but it's a great lecture if you're interested in learning more. And that's how I got like a really good understanding of the 11th and 12th, and the whole concept of like the good and evil diamonds. But thank you for saying that. That's helpful. And yeah, basically Jupiter is the planet that joys here in the 11th, and therefore the 11th house gets a lot of its characteristics and significations from this planet Jupiter, in the 11th house. So you know, when we're talking about like where this is in the sky, around like 11 a.m. ish, like basically like the hour or two before noon, before the sun is at its highest point. And this place in the chart forms a overcoming or superior sextile to the ascendant. So again, we're talking, it's above the earth, and it's sort of like casting it this 60-degree angle, this ray to the ascendant, and therefore a trine to the descendant. But that's not that's not as important as as its sextile to the ascendant, because ascendant, it's you, it's the native. So yeah, we get this beneficence kind of raining down from the 11th house. And basically that sextile, that overcoming sextile, speaks to topics of the 11th house having a benefic or like supportive effect on the native, on the first house. Yeah, so when we're talking about the 11th and like its connection with Jupiter, some I guess basic significations of the 11th. um Good fortune, good sorry, not good fortune, that's, wait, I'm mixing up words, sorry. What I was gonna say, uh uh
The name of the house?
no, I was gonna say, God, I'm blanking right
Goodwill,
now. What's that?
Good spirit.
Good
goodwill.
spirit, but I was gonna, I'm thinking of basically like one way of looking at the 11th is it's it's your aspirations for the
Mm,
future. It's like what you're looking, if the 10th house is like this, the height of your life, right? Like um you at your most known, your career, vocation, what have you, your reputation. The 11th house is like what comes after that. So like we're looking towards the future now, like, okay, I reached this great height in my career, like how can I now give back, or how can I expand on this? And so it does have this like aspirational sort of like future oriented um position, I guess.
mm,
Another thing you can think of it is, I'm like trying not to, I'm trying to like stick with the basics, and I feel like I'm getting too ahead of myself. But you know, friends, associates, folks that are supportive of you in some way, shape, or form. So
mm.
whether that
Peers.
be, yeah, it's like your community, your network. And I like to say it's folks that you share, it's like-minded people. So whether that
Yeah.
means you share
For
similar
sure.
views, similar philosophies, or similar values as well.
Mhm.
Of 11th house will also be sort of like your industry too. It can be, especially if you're like, you know, us astrologers, like our industry tends to be very community oriented. Not always, but it can be.
Yeah.
um, yeah. How about you guys? Other 11th house significations?
Yeah.
Um,
Go
you
ahead.
go, Deja.
You sure?
Yeah.
um, yeah, no, I agree with everything that you just said. Friends and acquaintances and like alliances that you make. Um, in vocational astrology, which is I'm like diving into the depths of right now. It's also like the house, the place of um like uh what's the word? Friends of really powerful people. Um, people who are like advisors of the king in ancient time and like the really important person. Um and alliances that you make and network has really been a really big thing um, that I've seen, especially for me, and community as well. Then kind of bouncing off of that, um, but yeah, no, the 11th is a fun. It's a fun, more like um, outwardly expressive. Like I have this good stuff now. I kind of want to share it and like get it
Mm-hmm.
out there and give it to all the people within my
Mm.
network as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is the
Who else
ninth.
like believes in this? Like who
Right.
else
Right.
also yeah, thinks
Right.
this
Yeah,
is
who are my
important?
people,
Right.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I pulled up my notes from Demetria George's lecture, because I was like, I want to remember what I was trying to say. So some significations based on traditional texts are kind of interesting. One of them, well, so the early texts, a lot of them talked about it being a house that has to do with wealth.
Mhm.
And I think part of that is because it is the joy of Jupiter. Another part, it is the second house from the 10th.
10th.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's like the money that you can make from your career, or
Mhm.
from your business too. But yeah, it wealth was a big one. Also, children went into the
Yeah.
11th
Yeah.
house.
I saw
And
that when I was looking at some of the texts as well.
yeah, and it makes
That
sense
one says
because
it.
that's when people prayed for children a lot. Like that was one of the most like sought after, like, something that people would like
That's
go to the
true.
temple to like pray for, is like it was a
Yeah.
blessing, huge blessing was children. And because it was, more people died, more children died during childbirth back then. So yeah, children was another one. And Jupiter signified children in ancient times. There was like a temple of Jupiter, I guess, that people prayed at. Yeah, there were
Jupiter did have a lot of
historically.
children, so
Yeah,
Tons. So
exactly.
many.
She wrote, or she
very
said that.
generative.
Yep.
Exactly. Jupe juice, right? Jupiter
My
rules
God.
Oh my
the juices of
God.
the world.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
So yeah,
That-
children were historically one of the most prayed for blessings in life. But yeah, friends, alliances, patrons. Um, and again, this is a house where there's like direct influence on the ascendant in like a very benefic way. This like sextile to the ascendant. So I like to think of the 11th house as like the people who have your back, the people who are going to support you.
Mm-hmm.
And Demetra George talks about how like planets, or how the ancients would say that any planet here it's like kind of automatically like becomes benefic in a way. So like even if you have a malefic here, it sort of like helps it be nicer by being in the 11th house, because again it's forming that sextile to the ascendant. It doesn't mean that like Mars is going to act like Venus or anything, that it's in the
Oh
11th,
no.
but it
Oh
sort of
no.
takes on some Jupiterian type qualities of, you know, providing some niceness, like, providing support.
Mm.
Yeah.
Maybe providing like something, like representing something that you can find to gather around with other people,
Yeah.
like something like uniting.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my
I did.
gosh, that's such a good lecture. I highly suggest. I'm like looking at my notes, like, oh, I know I want to listen to it again. So yeah, 11th house. I mean, some of you might know I have a community called the 11th House, an online virtual community membership thing. I called it the 11th House because my 11th house. Well, Saturn entered my 11th house in December of 2017. And just like a month after that, I started my first in-person meetup group called Deep Seekers, where basically it's just for astrology enthusiasts like me to come together and like connect around astrology. Because it was just, I think a lot of us, probably most of us, can relate to getting really into astrology and like loving the shit out of it, but having no one to talk to about it. It's like
Yeah.
you try to talk to
Oh,
your
for
friends
sure.
and family, and
Yeah.
they're just like, don't care, like don't really know what you're talking about, or don't have the same enthusiasm as you do. And
Yeah.
astrology is a
Yeah.
language, and it's something like you need to be able to speak your language with other people. So I started Deep Seekers in January 2018. Again, this is the very beginning of Saturn moving through my 11th house. And that was the beginning of me becoming more involved in the astrology community. And, just 3 years of that, just like meeting more astrologers. I started doing NYC Astro meetups, basically, or what did I call them? NYC astrologer dinners. Yeah. So I started organizing dinners for New York City area astrologers, and we would do that every month. And that was like so much fun. Honestly, I think the last one was almost a year ago, exactly, right before the pandemic
Aw.
hit. And I just got to like be in community with more astrologers, and then got on Astro Twitter in 2018 as well. And it sort of just like blew up my world in terms of like, connecting me with you guys, people like you and
Totally.
all my astro friends. And so that was Saturn moving through my 11th house. And on December 19th, 2020, like just a day or two after Saturn left Capricorn, entered Aquarius, I launched the 11th house, which is basically my community, like an online community for like folks to gather virtually because we can't really do it in
Yeah.
person anymore. And it's been great, but I wanted to bring it up because like, yeah, it names it the 11th house because it's basically, I'm like hoping it can be like people's 11th houses, you know, like a place where you can connect with like-minded people,
Yeah.
and support one
I love that.
another. Yeah.
Sure.
And I have like my, like, you know, millennial dream stellium, aka the Uranus Neptune conjunction, plus my
Oh,
North Node
yes.
in my 11th house. So it's like utopic visions, right? Um,
Yeah.
for what can be. And I definitely have that when it comes to like community and in groups. And like as a kid, that's literally all I wanted. I watched TV constantly as a kid and like sitcoms and stuff, and I just like Boy Meets World and how they have this like
Oh,
close friend group.
so cute.
And they just like went to college together, and like they
So
just
cute.
like that was my dream,
Yep.
right? And um it and like moving to New York at 18 and sort of like getting into community with folks and like finding my people there, and then furthermore finding my people within astrology who are like really my people, because you know we can speak our language to each other. It's just like, yeah, I the 11th house sort of like visions of like what community can be, what friendships can be. I'm always going to be chasing that. So yeah, I just wanted to
Mm.
share that like the 11th house is, I don't have a lot there, but it's like very meaningful part of my life and my chart, and I have a lot of things aspecting that. So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah. And also, like,
Yeah.
so you have Capricorn 11th house, so like ruled by Saturn, and
Mhm.
like you're literally have been building like community
Yep.
spaces as well.
Yeah.
Like you built like deep seekers, and then like you're providing like the structure for community, which I
Definitely.
Yeah.
think is very like Saturnian.
It
For
Like,
is
sure.
super Saturnian. Yeah. I mean, I knew that it was like my Saturn return, like, you know, I don't want to say project, but like that's the thing I needed to do. My Saturn return is like kind of create containers for community, and I'm
mm,
still doing that. You know, that's still, I'm still trying to create more and more containers, excuse me, for folks. Um, but yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah, Saturn, and plus Saturn being an Aquarius too kind of just like adds on to it as well. Um,
yeah.
but
We all have
yeah.
Saturn ruled 11th houses,
Oh
We
actually.
do.
yeah,
We do.
cool.
Um, and for me, like my Saturn, I have Aquarius 11th house, so ruling my Aquarius moon. And it's in the 12th house in Pisces. And I just like, ever since I was a kid, I always, like, I had like heaps of internet friends. And even though, like, I kind of always felt like a bit, like, I don't know, like a bit odd, like a bit weird. Like I didn't really fit in. But then I kind of like got on the internet, got on like Neopets, and then eventually like Tumblr,
Yeah.
and now like Astro Twitter. I've always had these like really like deep friendships and like feeling of community with people who are not like geographically close to me, that are like disconnected from me, which is very like 12th house, because the 12th house, you know, it's like it's far away. It's like
Yeah.
traditionally like far away foreign places. And I now also have like so many like close friendships with people who literally live like in other countries. Um yeah. And
I love that you
That's
said
awesome.
that, because I also have, you know, the ruler of my 11th and the 12th.
Oh,
And one of my
wow.
favorite phrases for my Saturn return has been alone together, um, which is one of my favorite stroke songs. But
yeah.
also, but also, yeah, it's like, you know, I've been solo dolo, like I'm living by myself for the first time through the Saturn return. And it's been super 12th housey, but at the same time, it's been so community oriented at the same time. And I'm like always talking to astrologers, like literally all, like I'm always on Clubhouse or doing this or on Twitter, like or on a
Mm.
group chat on Twitter,
You're
or
always
you know,
connected.
all the things. We're always
Yeah.
connected. So it's very much, yeah, like being alone. I'm alone, but I'm also like together. I'm with you guys all the time. So yeah, I'm so happy you said that. That's such a
Like a guardian
good
angel.
point. Yeah. Yeah. And Deja, like I would love to hear your thoughts about the 11th house, especially with your like super Aquarius stellium, especially because we have a super Aquarius stellium moving
Right
through your
now.
11th house right fucking now.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, yeah. My 11th house has the ruler of my ascendant, Mars, Uranus, um, Pallas, Venus, Jupiter. Yep, yep, Jupiter. And so and I just ended an 11th house perfection year
Oh,
in
whoa.
2018, just in December, December 18th. So I'm just really kind of, and it's actually really crazy because I'm also in a Jupiter return right now too. So I'm like
Oh,
really
wow.
Whoa.
11th house overload right now. And it
And you're in the 11th house too.
yes, I am. I am.
My 11th house.
Yeah, it's like it's very obvious. And looking back on my life, um I never really understood why community and like why group things were always so important to me. Like I went to a conference, a really big conference that changed my life, my fifth house year actually. And it was like this diversity conference from like students from all SDLC. Did you go
I
to
went to that.
Oh.
Yes,
Such a good, oh my
it was,
God. I'm
oh my God,
bringing
it
back so
was
many memories.
going to SDLC changed my life. It changed my perspective. It made me realize that there were other people out there who had like similar experiences to me, who also had the same it just, that was when I was like, community really does exist. And it's not
Yes.
just the people that I'm immediately around, like they're everywhere. And
I
that,
just want people to understand that, like, Deja and I, if you're listening, both Deja and I are Black. We went to a school that was like primarily white, like
very
primarily upper
white.
class, like very old money white folks.
Yep.
And so, like, for me, I don't know how many Black girls were in your class, but we had 7 out of 52, which was like a
Mhm.
very high percentage.
Yeah, we had 6.
Okay,
So
yes, out of like 60 something, right?
yep.
Yeah. So going to this conference and basically like seeing other Black kids who like
Mhm.
were also in similar situations in terms of like, you know, being in schools that were like predominantly white. And sometimes not, sometimes they weren't either, but just like being able to be in a space with like mostly Black and brown kids, like was so huge. I mean, for me, I went to that school from age 6 up until 18. Like I was there for 12 years. So there wasn't a lot of like
Or Jupiter
spaces.
cycle.
Yeah,
Wow,
exactly.
yeah.
But there weren't a lot of spaces that I were in were like, that were just Black or, you know, primarily Black and brown besides my family, besides being with family.
Right.
So yeah, I just like want to underscore like that conference, it was so big for like all of us who were
It was
there because it's
huge.
like, wow, there's more of like, it's not
Yep.
just me, you know what I
Yep.
mean? It was huge. So,
It was a
memories.
that was a really big deal. And it's wild because like right before I went to SDLC, we had gone like a few girls in my grade. Apparently, Haverford, which was our brother's school, they had like a mini diversity conference, and like we were like freshmen, we were like, let's go, and we went, and it was like we were like that wasn't okay, that was okay, and then
Yeah.
I actually like created a conference and like ran a conference myself in
Wow.
high
Oh,
school.
wow.
Yeah, so it's actually
So
it's like
11th house.
yeah, the astrology has been loud my entire life. I was on student government like
Oh my
the whole
gosh.
time I was at Agnes Darwin, which is our school.
Yeah.
I was like it very involved. And I was never really like that academic. Like, yeah, they were overachievers. But
Oh, yeah.
I made sure that I was friends with just about everyone in my grade.
Hmm.
I like being student body president was like my goal. I was like,
Yeah.
I must do this. And it wasn't even like a thing for myself, but it was, and I think this is Mars kind of being in my 11th too. It was also just the fact of like me wanting to be someone who's speaking up for and defending my own communities. And I did feel like an outsider, and I feel like that is a very like Aquarian 11th house Saturnian thing, because I was Black, because like even within my Blackness, that within itself was a very interesting experience for me, and kind of understanding that relative to like, it's just all of it. It was just very much like me trying to make sure that like while I am making these connections, the connections are for the sake of my
Your
people, for my
people.
network.
Yeah.
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 And even this past year, my 11th house year, it was all about that. It was about like connecting with astrologers, really kind of being like, this is what these are my hopes, these are my wishes, I want to do this. I'm going to make connections. Like you and I, Kirah, connected in my 11th house year. Like I made so many friends. I've reconnected with so many people. It was wild. And they weren't all BFFs, but they were people that I had met along my journey up until that point. And even now, with everything going through Aquarius, understanding and really tapping in and honing in on my ideology concerning community has really been a big thing for me this year, but so far. And it's really beautiful to see, honestly, truthfully, and to create those containers and those pockets for people to kind of feel seen within the community, and then to also have the confidence to kind of show themselves as well. Yeah. So
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that.
You're welcome.
I feel like something that you said made me want to talk about, like, yeah, when you have your chart ruler in the 11th or your sect light, or either light, I would say in the 11th or stellium, you have like 2 out of the 3, Deja. Yeah, what I find with that, because some people are like, yeah, I mean, like I have friends, like, whatever. But what I find is that those type of people often, it's like they need to orient themselves within, like you need to be a part of a group of like-minded people to feel like yourself. Like
Yep.
it's hard to orient yourself without like seeing who you are amongst like others. And like community could be so many different things. Like it could be, I'm not going to even list all the different things, but I'm just thinking, like, I think 11th house type people really need, like there's a concern's not the right word, but there's like, I guess, a focus around like, who are you in relation to everyone else, basically? Like like what like micro groups are you a part of, and like what groups is that a part of, and it sort of like goes out from there till you're like talking about just being a part of a global community. But it's like you could be like, it's like, yeah, you could be Jewish, right? So you have like your Jewish friends, and then it's like you're trans, you're trans non-binary, so you have like your Jewish trans non-binary friends, right? And it's like you could have this like this little pocket, and then it's like, oh, but you guys are also like, you're also relate to being anti-capitalist. And so it's like all of these different like identities,
Venn diagrams.
yeah, the Venn diagrams. And it's like there's all these different, like smaller pockets within that kind of keep expanding and expanding. And it's like just finding your people that you can identify with, really. And it's not just like the one-on-one connections, because it's not just about finding your best friend within this. It's about like finding like the commonalities between you and other people, on like a larger scale. Yeah, we live in a society. The 11th house makes me want to say that.
We do live in a society. As an Aquarius 11th house, I agree.
Yep.
We do live in a society.
Do you have any thoughts about like 11th house stuff with your sect light, your very full moon sect light there?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, thinking about my 11th house perfection year, that's kind of when I got on Astro Twitter. And even though I'd like been studying astrology like since 2015, like in Sydney, like most of the people who I knew in the astrology community in Sydney was like a lot older than me, and we didn't necessarily like share all the same values, but and like life experiences and like priorities. But then like when I like got onto Astro Twitter, I just like immediately connected with a bunch of people who like, yeah, we shared sort of like similar values and similar interests, like even like similar interests within astrology, like getting into traditional astrology and stuff like that. And I think that really, yeah, just like reinvigorated like my passion for astrology. And
Definitely.
yeah, and I also like even like outside of astrology, like that year was actually when eclipses were happening across my 5th and 11th house. Like the South Node was in Aquarius.
Oh my
Um,
God.
yeah,
Wait. Oh, I remember this.
yeah, I know.
How come I
It was
never
like
put
such
that
an important
together?
time.
It was.
Yeah, like for me, like it was just, I mean, there was lots of 5th house stuff as well, like, but in terms of the 11th house with the South Node there, the South Node is sort of like this um, clearing out energy and sort of like separating energy. And I did, like, my moon is in the 11th house and the ruler of my moon 11th house is in the 12th. So I did have like, I guess, a lot of um, tangled like emotions and like grief and sadness around friendship, which I feel like the eclipses there and the South Node moving through there really kind of helped me like transmute and sort of like accept like that some of my friendships like weren't like how they used to be, even though I like so desperately wanted to like cling on to them, and I just sort of accepted them as they were, which not only made me like kind of really happy with how just like happily accepting them as they were different to how they used to be, but they were fine as they were. And that kind of enabled me to like interact with those friendships differently. But then I also sort of like, yeah, made this like new like friendship group, which was, yeah, really amazing. And really different because it's like the friends you have like when you're growing up and like when you're a teenager, I don't know, it just comes with all that like teenagery-ness, all the hormones. And then I don't know, this was kind of my first like group of friends I made like as an adult, and it was so different and so like fulfilling. Yeah, and then like the Astro Twitter friends, and yeah, so with the 11th house, like I think, yes, like what you said, like finding your people, and like it's a joy of Jupiter, so it's like warm, like can be warm and uplifting, and like Jupiter encourages us to like kind of reach further, and I feel like we're very influenced by like the groups we're in, the people that was yeah,
and
they
we've learned
influence
from
sort
each
of like what we
other.
aspire to.
Yeah, I love that.
I feel like that's like the good daimon too, you know, like it is that like acquiring knowledge from having like advisory from not necessarily like you, but like your friends, all of those alliances as well. It's like you're getting info from the people around you. And that's a huge Jupiter thing. And then like getting that info and then
The
wanting to share
council.
that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
council.
It's that's always been like a really big thing for me, especially. I think it's also because my sad stuff, I'm like, guys, everybody has to know about how amazing astrology is, or everybody has to know what's going, like what injustice or what oppression is going on in the world. Like you have to know, and even like you have to know so that we can band together as a community and like be amazing and like make a change. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I wish
Alice
people realized
Sparkley
that.
Cat, the astrologer, like just speaking on that, talks about the 11th house as about the house about changing the world with people, which I don't know, just like came to mind.
Yeah. Damn. I love that you brought up the South Node moving through, because that was me for the past couple of years too. The South Node moving through my 11th in Capricorn. And exact same thing happened to me basically, where like I spent, 8 years with the same group of like 7 boys. They're all Libras, and like we just hung out all the time and we just smoked weed, and like they were my art school friends.
Mm.
We were always there for each other. We were always, but when Saturn entered my 11th and then the South Node started moving through there, I was like, what am I getting out of this? Like, I'm smoking these fools out left and right, listening to them talk about, their girl problems or what have you, like just kind of being, you know, their everything. And I've realized I was not getting what I needed out of those relationships, like at all. And which is when I started being like, I need more astrologer friends. I need more BIPOC friends. Like, I need more people who are into the shit that I'm into. And like very, very quickly started building those communities. And I'm still friends with those boys. It's just like our friendships changed, like the way that we were, in relationship changed. And they kind of fell out with each other too. So the South Node really did like break up a lot of that, and Saturn did too. Like, formed a lot of distance between me and them, but it also like solidified so many other important relationships in my life. Yeah, God. 11th house. I love talking about these houses. Like, this has been so much fun. Of
Yeah.
course, we're talking about like the most benefic houses. But it's just been really great. Yeah, and I guess final thoughts, like something that's coming to mind for me, it's just like what you create in the 11th house. I'm sorry, what you create in the 5th house is like almost like can be funneled, or like, are you creating for community, I guess. And I don't know if
Mm.
that's just like a personal thing of mine. I have like the ruler of my 5th at the bendings, like, square the South and the North Node. And so for me, that's very true. Like, my creations are meant to serve my community. But I still think there is sort of a connection there. Like, one thing we didn't mention about the 11th house, like, yes, it's your supporters, but those are like your social media followers. It's also like just your audience in
Big
general.
time. Big time.
And it's also like your fans, like if you're like a rock star. And Austin Coppock loves to use Kurt Cobain as an example, because was his stellium in the 11th? This is Pisces stellium in the 11th, or did he just have other shit in the 11th?
Oh, I
No,
think,
because he's a
I
Cancer
thought it was.
rising.
No, I think he's Virgo rising.
yeah,
Virgo
I think he's
rising.
Virgo
Jupiter
rising.
and Cancer.
Okay, that's what it
Yeah.
was. Thank
Maybe
you.
Venus too.
Yeah, he had
Maybe the
some really
moon.
nice benefic shit going on, like exalted
Yeah.
Jupiter in the 11th, and like, diehard fan base. People still are like diehard fans of Kurt Cobain. So yeah, having a lot of planets there can just speak to like having a lot of supporters. I have clients who have that, especially like a benefic in the 11th, especially if it's Jupiter. I'm like, lean on those people, like lean on your community. Like, they have your back. If you're looking for work, like, talk to your friends, like see if you can, especially if you have, ruler of the 10th, ruler of the 6th, ruler of the 2nd, like in the 11th, like that they will help you make money. Like, they will help you find a career, you know what I
You're
mean?
like
So
adding
like,
me. You're like Deja.
Yeah.
I know, I'm like, this probably is just like, sounds like a recording from our reading together. um but yeah, I mean, the 11th house, those are the people that are going to support you and have your back. So lean on them. Like, don't think you have to do everything alone. That's me at myself. So yeah, that's another thing that just came up for me. It's just like, those are your followers. Those are your supporters, your people. So, and also treat them well, give them a little something, something when they give you a little
Yeah.
something, something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like the 11th house is like people who like support you and patrons. But then you can also be in that role as well. Like,
Yep.
I've been thinking a lot about, yeah, I don't know. Like, I have my Venus in Joy in the 5th opposite my full moon in the 11th house. And I feel like I've been so like blessed and lucky for like, I don't know, I just feel like I've always had like lots of like guardian angels, like who are human beings, sort of looking after me, even like when I don't necessarily feel like, I'm like, why are you supporting me? Like, I don't deserve it or anything. But yeah, I don't know. I just like feeling really grateful lately for those people. And I've been thinking about like, okay, like I've had like a lot of support from these guardian angels and like these people in the community. Like, how can I sort of like give that back and be that for other people as well? And I think, yeah, it's definitely like, I don't know, the joy of experiencing like support that's sort of like with no conditions, it's unconditional, is really incredible. And I think, yeah, we should all strive to sort of like offer that to people at least a few times in our life, if not like as much as possible. And I think gratitude can be, I don't know, gratitude just seems to fit well with the 5th and 11th house as well. Like in terms of like recognizing I'm sorry, recognizing and like affirming joy and like aliveness. Like I think gratitude can be a really good way to work with those houses.
Yes, I love that.
Sure.
One other thing, like kind of piggybacking off of that, if you have your midheaven in the 11th house, you might be someone whose career or vocation is tied to community networks, being one amongst many, basically. And perhaps like if your sun is there, you're a leader, within a group or community. And yeah, midheaven there could speak to just like being known for your work within a community, or within a group, or doing work for a particular group. Just what you were saying, reminding me of that too. Like you can be someone that, is a patron, and like that's what you do for a living, is help facilitate other people giving to a particular community or group.
Yeah. And like you did, Kirah, like when you wanted community, you built community. So, which is very like a Capricorn, like Saturnian 11th house. And yeah, I would like to share a quote about community, if I could, that I came across from Bell Hooks' All About Love. So it's not a quote from her, but she like quotes it in her book. It's from a psychiatrist and writer, M. Scott Peck. And he defines community as the coming together of a group of individuals who have learned how to communicate honestly with each other, whose relationships go deeper than their masks of composure, and who have developed some significant commitment to rejoice together, mourn together, and to delight in each other and make others' conditions our own.
Wow.
Let's end it with that. Like there's nothing following that. That was so beautiful. Thank you.
Perfect.
It's plug time. Thank you so much, both of you, for being on the show and talking about these lovely houses with me. Let's tell folks how they can find you and learn more about your practice. Deja, why don't you start?
Sure. People can find me on Instagram at Queen Jupiter Astrology. You can also check out my website, queenjupiterastrology.com. I have a YouTube channel where I make bi-weekly horoscopes, trying to throw in some like educational info stuff there too. And Twitter. Oh, Twitter. You can really find me on Twitter right now. Like, I think that's where I'm really embodying my Jupiter return and Aquarius 11th house transit is on Twitter right now. So really catch me there. And what else? Yeah, that's it. I'm pretty sure.
And they can book readings with you through your site.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that would be really fun. I love meeting with people. It's really fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. And Scar, how about you?
I just want to say, I just looked up your website, Deja. Like, it's so good.
It's so good.
Stop.
Oh, nice. Anyway,
thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, so I have a website, scarletcoote.com. So ScarletCoote.com. I have Instagram, so it's like at Scarlet_astrology. I am on Twitter. My Twitter is private right now. Just, I don't know. I'm just having a moment. So,
It's
but
totally fine.
you can request to follow me if you like. I don't know. I mainly just post photos of my kittens there lately. So that is at Luna_Aquarius. I didn't mention this, I think, in my introduction, but I am really into writing about astrology. So I have some stuff on my blog, and I also have like an article in Wellbeing magazine, which is like an Australian publication. They had like a 2021 astrology guide. So I wrote about the eclipses and the nodes in Gemini and Sag in 2021 there. So there's like a digital version and a physical version. So I'll plug that as well.
Nice.
And yeah, I'm not taking readings at the moment, but I don't know, in 2021, I have a newsletter which you can sign up to, which is where I will announce. So
yeah, Scarlett is like an amazing writer. She has an exalted Mercury in Virgo, so you already know. Definitely check out her writing. And Deja, did you want to?
Yeah, I meant to say this. You reminded me. Thank you, Scarlett, for that. I'm actually like looking for people. This is Jupiter in his joy. Looking for people to like feature on my website. Like I'm looking to put articles and posts, what Twitter threads, whatever, on my website, because I feel like
So
I have a
11th
website.
house.
Like why not give other people a
oh my
platform?
gosh, that's so 11th house.
That's so
I know,
11th
isn't
house.
it? It's
Oh my
so
gosh.
it's so crazy.
I love it.
So yeah, if there's other like astrologers out there, even if you're just getting, especially if you're just getting started and you don't have a space that you've already created for yourself, please email me, queenjupiterastrology@gmail.com. And Scarlett, that means you too. Please.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Sounds good. Wow. This is so 11th house. I feel very much in the 11th house right now. Like
Yay.
just like the connections and the networks and yeah.
That's great.
I
I'm
love
so
that.
happy that you two connected here today too, because yeah, I mean, Aries risings, both have Leo and Aquarius placements. It's like it was meant to
Yeah. I feel like our Jupiters are on each other's important placements. Like my Jupe's in Sag, your Jupe's in
be.
Aquarius.
Oh
So
yeah. I
It's really
love
fun.
it.
It's
Oh,
amazing.
lovely. Well,
Kirah, you're so good at bringing people together.
thank you. It is what I do. It is what I do. Yeah, I have my Jupiter, which is my chart ruler. It's in the 7th house. I'm already like, a people person. And then it trines my Uranus North Node in the 11th. So I really do like to do like the one-on-one connections and then like bring it into community and create more one-on-one connections in the community. Yeah. 7th house, 11th house connections, I love, because it's like, I will be friends with you, and then I'm going to introduce you to all of my friends, and you're going to be friends with all of them too.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm like
It's a
that as
huge
well.
thing.
Love that.
Same. Yeah, me too.
Okay. Well, I've had you guys on here for a very long time. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Kia.